Hello everyone, it is Evely, and today I'm going to tell you a story. Enjoy your viewing and good luck. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the excavation team descended deeper into the earth. Their mission was simple: explore a newly discovered shaft, push the limits of human knowledge, and perhaps uncover resources that had been buried for millennia. But none of them knew what waited below. Not yet. The shaft, found in the heart of the Amazon rainforest, had appeared overnight, an unnatural fissure that sliced through the land like a wound. No one could explain it. Satellite imagery showed nothing before, but there it was, a jagged, gaping hole, an abyss. Dr. Meredith Grant, the lead geologist, had insisted on an immediate descent. She'd always believed that humanity's future lay underground, in the deep veins of the earth. The bowels of the earth hide wonders, she had said to her team, her voice firm with excitement. But there was something in her eyes, an unsettling gleam that none of them could place. The rest of the team, 3 biologists, 2 engineers, and a cameraman, agreed, mostly out of a sense of duty. They were explorers, after all. But as the days wore on, and their descent stretched further than any of them anticipated, unease began to grow. The first few miles had been easy enough. Dark, damp corridors filled with the scent of ancient rock and earth, veins of glittering minerals lining the walls like forgotten treasures. The deeper they went, however, the air grew heavier, thicker, suffocating. Every breath felt like a battle, and every step felt like it was taking them further away from the world they knew. "There's something wrong," said Dr. Thomas Hayes, one of the biologists, his voice tense. He stopped, peering into the pitch-black cavern ahead of them. "This place isn't natural. It doesn't feel right." Grant didn't answer. She didn't need to. They had all begun to sense it, the oppressive weight of something unseen, a presence that wasn't simply part of the earth. Something was waiting for them, something old and vast, hidden in the deep. Yet none of them could bring themselves to turn back. Curiosity, that eternal human flaw, pushed them onward. It wasn't until they reached the first cavern that the true strangeness of the place revealed itself. The tunnel had opened up into a vast, subterranean chamber, its size impossible to fathom. The floor was smooth, unnaturally so, as if it had been shaped by an unseen hand. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like jagged teeth, dripping water with a slow, rhythmic beat. And then they saw it, the strange, organic growths that covered the walls of the cavern. At first, they thought it was just a strange form of fungus, something benign, but the closer they got, the more they realized it was something far worse. The growths pulsed. They twitched. They seemed alive. I don't like this," murmured John, one of the engineers, his flashlight flickering. "That's not fungus. Look at it." Grant stepped forward, determined to push through her unease. She reached out to touch one of the growths, but as her fingers brushed against it, a sound like 1,000 insects crawling beneath the surface filled the chamber. The growths trembled, and the entire cavern seemed to shift. The noise intensified. The walls groaned. The ground trembled harder. "What the hell is that?" shouted Hayes, his voice rising in panic. Grant turned sharply to him, her face pale. "We need to go. Now." But it was already too late. The walls of the cavern erupted. The growths began to split, revealing eyes. Dozens of eyes, each one staring with unnatural intensity, following them. They blinked slowly, deliberately, and then, without warning, the eyes opened wide, revealing rows of jagged, serrated teeth within. The very walls of the cavern seemed to recoil in horror as the eyes, those terrible ancient eyes, focused on them. The ground shook violently as something massive stirred beneath them, sending a cascade of rocks and debris tumbling from the ceiling. The noise of something shifting, something large, something alive, echoed through the chamber. They were not alone. "We need to get out of here," shouted John, his voice nearly drowned out by the cacophony. But before anyone could move, the floor beneath their feet cracked open, revealing a dark chasm. From within, something long, thick, and writhing emerged, covered in slime and scales that reflected the light of their torches. It was massive, its segmented body stretching into the abyss, as if the very earth was giving birth to it. The thing moved swiftly, its many legs scraping against the stone. As it reared up, a terrible screech filled the air, causing their ears to ring with the sound of pure, primal terror. The air grew colder, the weight of it pressing against their skin. "What is it?" Meredith whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "It's not natural," Hayes managed, backing away. The creature, if it could be called that, slithered forward with an unnatural speed, its many eyes watching them with an intelligence that sent a chill down their spines. Its body was covered in thick, exoskeletal plates, but between the segments were pulsing sacs, and from those sacs, a faint, sickly glow emanated. It was alive in ways they couldn't understand. Without warning, the creature lunged. The first to fall was John. His scream abruptly cut off as the creature's massive maw closed around him with a sickening crunch. "No!" screamed Hayes, running forward, but it was already too late. The thing reared its head again, spraying a vile, thick substance from its mouth that burned the stone where it landed. "Run!" Grant shouted, but the cavern was already shaking so violently, the ground splitting beneath their feet. There was nowhere to run. Suddenly, the wall to their left exploded outward, and a second creature, larger and more grotesque than the first, emerged. This one had tendrils that stretched across the ground, wrapping themselves around anything they touched, dragging it toward its enormous mouth. Meredith felt the ground beneath her feet give way as she stumbled backward, her heart racing. Her mind screamed to move, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from the horrors that had come to life beneath the earth. And then she saw it, a shape in the distance, a massive, undulating mass moving in time with the other creatures. It wasn't a single form, it was an entire colony, a mass of flesh moving as one. The masters of the earth had awoken, and they were hungry. As the ground cracked open beneath them, Meredith knew one thing for sure. They had come too deep, too far. They had disturbed something that had been slumbering for eons, and it was time to pay the price. Meredith's breath came in sharp, desperate gasps as she stumbled backward, her heart hammering in her chest. The walls of the cavern were alive with the grotesque movements of the creatures. The floor split again, and another horror emerged from the depths. A writhing mass of flesh and teeth, its form flickering between shapes, as though it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. She could feel the heat of its breath, fetid and rancid, wash over her. The air grew thicker, suffocating, and every movement she made felt like wading through molasses. Panic clawed at her throat, but she forced herself to focus. Her team was scattering, running in every direction, but it was hopeless. These creatures moved too fast, their alien forms too many, too vast. Hayes was the first to scream as one of the things lunged at him, its mouth wide, filled with rows of jagged teeth. He didn't even have time to react before he was consumed. His cries silenced in an instant. Meredith's stomach churned at the sight, but there was no time to mourn. "Not now. Not here. Move!" she shouted to the others, her voice cracking, but the words were drowned out by the deafening noise, the screeches and hisses that echoed through the cavern. It felt like the earth itself was shaking with an ancient, vengeful fury. The remaining members of the team scattered, each one trying desperately to find an escape. But it was clear that escape was impossible. The very structure of the cave was shifting, contorting, as if the earth was alive, fighting against them. Meredith's eyes darted around, frantic, trying to find a way out, but all she saw were endless tunnels, walls teeming with those awful, pulsating eyes, and the creatures, so many creatures, crawling toward them. "Where's John?" cried the cameraman, his voice trembling as he stumbled backward. He turned toward Meredith, but his face paled when he saw the thing behind him. A creature, its body resembling an elongated centipede, its many legs skittering along the ground at an impossible speed, was already upon him. Before he could react, the creature struck with a vicious snap, its mandibles crushing into his skull. "No!" Meredith screamed, her pulse racing as she reached for him, but the distance was too far. She couldn't save him. The team was falling apart. One by one, they were picked off by the creatures, swallowed whole, or crushed by their sheer size. The air reeked of blood and earth. Every instinct in Meredith told her to run, to flee, but her feet felt rooted to the ground, frozen by fear. And then she saw it. A figure in the distance, standing impossibly still amidst the chaos, watching the horrors unfold. Meredith's breath caught in her throat as she locked eyes with it. It wasn't human. At first glance, it appeared to be a person, tall with a thin, bony frame, but as her mind processed the details, the terror set in. Its skin was like a patchwork of raw, wet flesh, too pale, too unnatural. Its arms were too long, ending in thin, elongated fingers tipped with sharp, black claws. Its eyes, those dreadful empty eyes, were like black holes, sucking in all light, and its mouth. Its mouth was a wide, gaping slit, filled with rows of sharp teeth that looked too much like the growths on the walls of the cavern. The figure didn't move. It just stared, a strange, almost knowing expression twisting its malformed features. And then, a voice, not spoken, but felt deep inside her mind. "We were here first." The words were not in any language, yet Meredith understood them with a sickening clarity. She took a step back, terror flooding her senses. The thing didn't need to speak. Its presence alone conveyed its intent. It had been here long before humanity had walked the earth. And now it was time for the earth to reclaim its throne. Meredith stumbled, her head spinning. What were these creatures? Why had they stayed hidden beneath the earth for so long? The creatures, the things, they were not just animals. They were something older, something far more terrible. "You have disturbed us." Meredith's mind reeled as the voice filled her thoughts, her vision beginning to blur. The thing was speaking to her, not with words but with pure intent, with the weight of centuries behind it. It wasn't simply trying to communicate, it was asserting its dominance. It was reminding her that humanity was nothing but a fleeting moment in the history of the earth. And now the time had come for the true masters to rise. The earth shook violently again, and this time it was different. The tremors were not from the creatures, but from something far greater, something immense, something ancient. Meredith's eyes widened as the cavern began to collapse, the walls cracking open like the peeling skin of a rotting carcass. A deep, rumbling sound filled the air, growing louder and louder until it seemed to drown out all else. The ground split wide, and from the abyss emerged something that made the creatures look small, insignificant. It was a mass of living stone, a gargantuan, pulsing form that seemed to stretch for miles. Its surface was covered in the same writhing growths as the walls, the same glowing, pulsing sacs that now oozed a viscous, dark fluid. It was the source, the origin, the thing that had been waiting in the depths of the earth for millennia. The creature, if it could be called such, was a living, breathing ecosystem, a mass of interconnected life that fed off the very fabric of the earth itself. Its form shifted constantly, like the surface of an ocean, undulating with strange, alien movements. Tendrils, like massive, segmented roots, twisted out of the ground, searching for prey, pulling the remnants of Meredith's team into the depths, their screams drowned out by the deafening roar of the creature's awakening. And then it began to speak, not in your language but in your blood, in your bones. Meredith felt it, a deep, reverberating pull, as though the earth itself was calling to her, commanding her to submit. She fell to her knees, her mind splintering under the weight of its presence. The creature, the colony, the masters of the earth, they were all one, and they were reclaiming their throne. The earth, long forgotten and overlooked, had returned to its true rulers. And Meredith understood, too late, the terrible truth. It was not humanity that had the power. It was the earth. And it was time to kneel. See you in the next video. Don't forget to support me.